Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of You Hate to See It. I'm Adam.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Nick.
And today we are joined by a very special guest. You may have read one of his various encyclopedias, or pedia, however you want to pronounce it.
I think it's pedia.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone says ped.
I think it's pedia.
No.
But welcome Steve Rubin to the show.
Guys,
how are you, Steve?
We need to get a clap track.
We should.
I'm great. I'm kind of in between two worlds. We're doing a home remodel, so I'm out of my house for 6 months, and it's kind of a little discombobulating or boob-relating, since we're talking Bond. It's crazy, but I'm doing well. I'm working on a lot of things. I'll be happy to share anything and everything for you.
Sweet.
Well, I mean, obviously the most important thing, I saw an episode of How I Met Your Mother where Ted Mosby says that it's encyclopedia. Is that correct, or is it pedia?
It's pedia. Sorry.
My whole life has changed now.
Honestly, I think that was all we needed. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's like when Diane Keaton is walking down the street with Woody Allen in Manhattan, and she's referring to Van Gogh, and Woody Allen looks at her like she's crazy. Excuse me, it's Van Gogh. No, anyway.
It's kind of like I think our modern version of that is Cool Whip from Family Guy. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
Love Family Guy. It's for my money the funniest show on television.
I love that show.
I do love it.
My fiance hates that I have to watch it whenever the new episode comes out. But
like once a year, almost once every year, like I'll go through a period where like that'll just be on in the background for everything I do. Like I'll just be watching through from the beginning, and if I'm not watching it, it's at least on.
You gotta I like to save up those episodes to get like 4 or 5, and then I just sit there drooling into my belly just watching Family Guy.
No, I didn't like that description.
I had to come up with something on the fly, Nick. Not everything can be funny.
Nothing is on this show.
Yeah. Does it have to be gross?
So back to our guest.
By the way, have you guys noticed that in modern language, every sentence now begins with the word "so"?
So yeah.
Yes. It pains me that I
challenge my wife some days. I say, let's go a whole day without using the word "so," and it's impossible.
If I don't use "so," I use or So
very good.
I'm on the phone all day at work, and the amount of times I use "so" is not good. It's just it's my thinking word. It's just if it's a long one, it's because I have no idea what I'm doing.
So okay,
yeah, it's like so.
It's the easiest transition word.
It's a great transition word. I would wish George Carlin was alive, because George Carlin could probably do 20 minutes on "so." He did 20 minutes on shit, and that was pretty classic.
God, I haven't watched George Carlin in years.
Last time I saw George Carlin was when I rewatched the Bill and Ted movies for the third one. Which are all great, by the way. I'm now
he's trying not.
I'm trying not
to say
so.
You got him.
You've literally ruined 80% of my language.
You got him on the ropes. Put him down.
And
Put
I
him
apologize down. Because I think it's. I use it. Everybody uses it. It's there. Yeah. Go for it.
No, I'm not gonna use it the rest of the episode.
Yes, because is such a better way to go.
You have. I just don't like starting sentences randomly.
It feels so abrupt.
You have written a few James Bond. I don't know why they're losing.
It's like you're reading a script and the teleprompter's going too slow,
or that he just completely forgot how to talk.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still want to use it.
Just use
You
it.
have-
You've broken them. Thank you. We've been trying for years.
You've written a few versions, a couple of the James Bond movie encyclopedias. How do you make an encyclopedia, and why did you choose James Bond?
Actually, I've written four. I've written four
Okay.
editions. First one was published in 1990. I've been writing about Bond since the 70s. My first book was the James Bond films, a behind-the-scenes history. I used to be a staff writer for a Chicago film journal called Cine Fantastique.
Huh.
And they were like the first magazine in America to really go crazy for science fiction, fantasy, and horror movies. And I got out of college, a history major, writing for my college paper. I was at UCLA looking for something to write. And I went through a few different things. I did a book on World War II combat films called Combat Films, American Realism, 1945 to 1970, which sold 400 copies. And I said, if this is the fate of the book business, I'll die. Because my royalty statement was $28. So I was looking around for a subject. And there were no books back in the 70s of note on the behind the scenes history of the James Bond movies. So I had just done all this research on World War II movies where I interviewed filmmakers, got the stories on classic films like The Longest Day and Bridge on the River Kwai.
Longest
So
Day
I
is
went-
amazing. That's such a great. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I love that movie.
Oh, yeah. So I went to Albert R. Broccoli, who was then the only producer of the James Bond movies. Harry Saltzman, his partner, had gotten into some financial trouble, had to sell off his side. And I must have caught him on a good day. His nickname was Cubby. Cubby really liked what I was doing historically because I was a trained historian from college. So I went over to London that summer and he introduced me to his stepson, Michael Wilson, who is now, along with Barbara Broccoli, they make the Bond movies. And I did that first book, which did very well. It sold 50,000 copies in two printings. And I was very proud of that book. And then about 13 years later, I get a call from another Chicago publishing house, Contemporary Books. And they asked me if I would consider doing an encyclopedia of James Bond movies. Now, the thing about Bond is it's all about stuff. It's about gadgets, it's about locations, it's about girls and nicknames and weapons and cars. So it's like perfect for an encyclopedia. And I a lot of the information, the real detailed stuff, I couldn't put in the first book as I was more about behind the scenes. So the encyclopedia was a lot of fun to do. The thing is, I would never have been able to do it unless there had been a computer involved, because you have to organically put an encyclopedia together, coming up with information from all different quadrants and then inserting them in alphabetical order. If I had to do that manually, it would have taken literally forever and I would have stopped.
Yeah. So for each of your newer versions, how do you go back and do you filter through your old encyclopedias, or do you just kind of go, okay, there's this hunk, now I just have to fill in whatever's happened since then, or do you try adding or subtracting? Or
Well, Adam, it's a real good question, because first of all, this is a pretty hefty book. I mean, it's the first three editions were coffee table size, and I said to myself, why would anybody buy more than one edition, even if there were new films, etc.? So for this latest edition, the fourth edition, I went nuts. I completely re-illustrated it. The latest edition of the James Bond movie encyclopedia, the cover of which is behind me, has over 400 photos and many in color. I also got art from Jeff Marshall. He let me use 20 of his paintings. He's one of the foremost artists of James Bond. Fan art, he's a fan. I went through all of the entries. Now, my publisher, interestingly enough, another Chicago influence, Chicago Review Press, published this, as they did my previous encyclopedia, the Twilight Zone Encyclopedia, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so they asked me to get rid of a lot of the minutia, like license plate numbers and signs and stuff that went in the first encyclopedia. and focus more on the backgrounds of all the performers. So there's more extensive biographies in the book of probably 200 or 300 people.
Now, how long does like the making this take? Like just any of them? Like what is
It takes
like?
about a year to, well, the first encyclopedia, I jumped right into it. It probably takes about a year to write. It takes another year to find the photos. Now, this encyclopedia, after having done this for 30 years, I knew a lot of the people who have photos, the people who collect. If I had to go to United Artists and ask to buy one photo for the pick book, they would have charged me $400. So there was no way I was going to get any photos from the studio because I would have gone broke in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
With all my friends collecting, I found 400 photos and I didn't pay a dime for them. The reason I can do this, and it's an interesting legal thing, is it's called fair use. If I was just publishing a picture book with just pictures, I would have never been able to get away with it because they would have sued me for infringement. But because I'm an historian writing about the history of a film genre, I'm able to utilize still images to illustrate points.
So there's no licensing at all with the actual studios or the people who made James Bond?
No, I have, well, I remember earlier I was talking about meeting Cubby Broccoli and getting full carte blanche. Well, that relationship kind of went a little sour, not really my fault, but it was one of those kind of situations you don't like to see happen, but it happened. I came back from London having done all of my interviews, and I got some terrific interviews with some people very key involved in behind the scenes of the Bond movies. I spoke to Peter Hunt, the editor, Terrence Young, the director, a lot of the stuntmen, special effects men, art directors, Ken Adam. And I was so excited about my interviews, I showed them to Cubby when I got back, the transcripts. And he walked away from the project. He saw it was out of his control. Other people were kind of doing their own thing. And I didn't think it was a big deal then because I already had my research done. But then I got a letter stating that there would be no photographs from the Bond movies. So here I was in the beginning of 1979. I had a book with no photos. Fred Clark, the editor of Cinefantastic, heard about it. And he put a full-page ad in Cinefantastic magazine with Cubby Broccoli in the gun sight, as if he was about to be shot. And the headline said, "Who is this producer and why do you want this book stopped?" I had no idea they were doing something like that. I bumped into Michael Wilson in the parking lot at MGM and he was furious. So what little relationship I had left with the Bond people completely ended that day. And that was 43 years ago.
Huh.
God damn.
Is there any relations with like the book?
Excuse me?
Is there any like relation with the book at all, like Ian Fleming or?
Oh, the original author?
Yeah.
No. I don't deal with it because I'm only dealing
just
with
the movies. Okay.
Just the movies. Although I make references at times to some changes that were made from the book. For instance, The Spy Who Loved Me, the third Roger Moore movie, it was not based on Ian Fleming's book, only the title. They completely came up with a new story, which in a sense is a remake of You Only Live Twice. Instead of capturing spaceships in a giant intruder spaceship, they're capturing submarines inside a super tanker. It's just kind of the same story.
Mm-hmm.
What is like your favorite James Bond movie? Having all this background information on them, like which one's the best?
He just comes out and says he's never seen one.
The first one I ever saw. In this Christmas '64, they were showing Goldfinger at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Now, I just read the paperback. The paperbacks that started to appear in the spring of '64 because it was announced that President Kennedy at that time was a fan of the James Bond series. From Russia with Love was on his reading list. So that revelation led the sales of books to go skyrocketing. And I read Goldfinger. And then it was kind of a big deal for me. I was 12, was going to the movies that Christmas to see a movie I'd read the book of. That did not happen very often. And Goldfinger to me still plays today. It's from '64, but it could have been made yesterday. although they could not do some of the things that they did in that movie. For instance, the lead bad girl, her name is Pussy Galore. I don't think you could get away with that today.
Probably not.
No.
Someone would be upset.
Yeah.
Someone, yeah.
All of women.
There's an early scene where Bond is being massaged by this really bosomy blonde by the pool in Florida. And Felix Leiter shows up and says, I thought I'd find you in good hands. And they have a repartee. And Bond says, Felix, say hello to Dink. Hi, Dink. And Dink say hi to Felix. And then he says, Dink, say goodbye to Felix. Man talk. And then he gives her a slap on the bottom. Another thing that you cannot do.
Yeah.
No. I feel like I gotta ask, who's your favorite Bond?
Well, it's axiomatic that you love the Bond you grew up with. So
Okay.
for me, Sean Connery is Bond. But I have to tell you, when Daniel Craig came aboard in 2006 in Casino Royale, my jaw dropped. I just could not believe how good he was as Bond. And he's never let us down in the 5 films he's done.
I think I only watched the first two or three.
Okay, so who in this room has watched the latest No Time to Die?
I
I'm
have.
not.
I have not.
Okay, Adam has seen it. So no spoilers, because there are people out there. Yeah, people over 40, by the way, still aren't going to the movies. So a lot of people didn't see it.
Yeah. I did not like it. I don't know. It's just they're just so long. That's my I can it's like, so I love Casino Royale. Am on Quantum of Solace, and I'm okay with
Skyfall.
I didn't see Skyfall, so I only saw the first two.
I'm okay with Skyfall. I don't like Spectre. I don't like No Time to Die. And it's really more for me the slowness that James Bond is. They're not like the action-packed movies that we see nowadays.
It's not Mission Impossible.
Yeah, it's not Mission Impossible. So,
well, the movies in general these days are way too long. It's like a cardinal rule that you have to have a 2.5 hour running time for an action movie. That's ridiculous. And I agree with you. I thought No Time to Die was very long. Daniel is terrific.
Oh,
and
I love him. He's great.
and I think that he's revitalized the Bond movies for a new generation. When it came to the early 2000s, the spectacular megalomaniac taking over the world kind of Bond movie was considered a little passé by then, with international terrorism becoming the thing that everybody's aware of. So if you think about it, most of the Bond movies now are about international terrorism, and these terrorists are all over the place, and Bond is going after them. And so he was the right guy. You can't, the kind of witty, kind of funny lines that were prominent with Roger Moore, with Pierce Brosnan. You couldn't do those today. You get laughed off the screen. They want, audiences want a toughness and a grittiness to Bond, and it corresponds with the other series that have been competitive, like you say, Mission Impossible, the Bourne series, even the Kingsman series. Some of the things they do steals a little page from Bond.
I was gonna say, I was actually gonna ask about that. I was like, do you think the Kingsman was like a weird shot at, not shot, but like make off of Bond?
Like parody / spiritual successor?
100%, absolutely, and they did it so cleverly.
I love them. The newest one is like
The Kingsman.
I liked it. I liked it.
the
It was
first two.
different though.
I don't like the Golden Circle, but yeah, I think those these slower movies work great in the older Bonds films. Like, they're 90 minutes long, and you can be slow. But when I have to sit down for 2 hours 45 minutes to watch really nothing happen, I can't. Between Spectre and No Time to Die, I was just like, God, if they could have cut an hour out of this, I probably would have enjoyed this more.
Adam, did you see No Time to Die on the big screen or at home?
At home.
Okay, you probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more at home. I have this theory about watching movies for the first time on the home screen. he gets a little too comfortable on the couch, and
Yeah.
you start to fall back, and your pulse lowers. I think that when you're in a theater and people are reacting, it's a little bit different.
I agree. I work in film, and I'm all about like go see movies in theaters. Like I love it, and I always, whenever like the new superhero movie or the new blockbuster or whatever, I always try and get like the really expensive tickets for the big surround sound, the seats shake. Like I like to do the whole shebang and make it an experience. But yeah.
We're hearing good things about Top Gun. Have you guys seen it?
Oh,
I
I
haven't
love
yet.
it.
I was thinking about going tomorrow and seeing it.
It's got to be the best movie I've seen in theaters since like Endgame.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah,
I'm like the Marvel guy, and I sit here and I'm like literally I've seen Spider-Man No Way Home, I've seen whatever else, Doctor Strange, I've seen these big Marvel movies, and I still will say Top Gun Maverick
blew most of those
the greatest movie I have seen this year, hands down. Like
it's
and like my fiance and I went to see Doctor Strange, and one of the previews before the movie was the first like 3.5 minutes, or like was 3.5 minutes of Top Gun Maverick, and we're watching it, and I keep nudging her, and I'm like, this looks fucking awesome. Like this is, and she's kind of like, like whatever. And I'm like, here. And we got home, and Top Gun was on Netflix. So I was like, okay. And so like, I don't know, like a week later, like we've been like, okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to watch Top Gun. So that way she gets it. And I told her, like, I'm going to see it, whether I see it with you or without you, I'm seeing it. She's like, okay, fine. So we went and watched Top Gun on Netflix. We get through it, and she was like, we got done. She's like, okay, now let's watch the second one. And I was like, that's in theaters. Like she got Top Gun and Mission Impossible confused, thinking that there's 15 of them between the newest one coming out. And I was like, no, it's in theaters in a week. She's like, oh, okay. So then we went and saw it in theaters, and she loved both movies, and which was wild to me because I didn't see that coming. But
I'm gonna go see it tomorrow. I just looked up times.
Think I've sat on my seat during a movie like that ever in my life.
Well, Nick, if you want to see it again, I'm seeing it tomorrow. So
you know, but I have plans, but thank you. Maybe.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, no, that was like, and I saw with a group of friends, and like it was like we were in a roller coaster. We were all leaning forward at the same time, and then leaning back, like, oh my god, and then leaning forward again.
The movie has given the movie business a big shot in the arm, because as you guys know, nobody was going to the movies much, and obviously the Marvel movies were attracting, but there just was not a lot of business across the board. Now people who don't go to the movies are going back to the movies, and there'll be more of it this weekend because they're releasing the Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I
don't
loved it.
think
Well, we had an older couple sitting next to us in the theaters, and we are sitting down, and this old lady and her husband come up to us, and she's like, hey, just let me know if we get too rowdy for you. And I was like, my fiance and I laughed, and we're like, oh, no problem. She's like, this is our first time seeing a movie since 2019 or whatever. And I was like, oh, cool. Like some chit chat, and then the movie starts, and it was so much. I enjoyed listening to her husband like making noises and like freaking out over things on the screen, and he's like nudging his wife, being like, oh, like this is from the first movie, and I was like, that was just fun to experience.
There's something about going to the movies that just never gets old.
It's a communal thing.
You can't duplicate that on the home screen. I mean, especially with comedy. Of course, comedies have disappeared from movies altogether occasionally, which is frustrating because I'm also in the business writing comedy. I've been writing a lot of spec features of late, and getting people to read comedy is very challenging.
I don't think I've seen a good comedy in theaters in a very, very long time.
I'll be
I
honest
feel
with you,
like The
I don't-
Kingsman was the last one I saw in
I'll be honest with you.
theaters.
I don't think a comedy would drag me. I don't like. I just don't like going out. I don't think a comedy would drag me to the theaters. Like,
Yeah.
it
So
doesn't.
it's
Like,
have to be the right actor.
yeah.
Well, also
Right.
you get like Adam Sandler just releases stuff like straight to
Mhm.
like Netflix.
Netflix, yeah.
And, like I feel like comedies just don't come out in theaters.
The
anymore.
only
I
thing
feel like
that
they go
would
straight to a
really-
streaming service.
No,
No.
you're absolutely right. Well, first of all, I actually had personal experience with this. I sent one of our comedies over to Paramount, the home of Top Gun, of course, and the executive read it and loved it. He said, "This is a terrific movie for Netflix." And I said, "Why isn't it a terrific movie for Paramount?" He said, "We just don't make anything unless it's a sequel, a prequel, a remake. Everything has to be branded. So comedies don't necessarily filter into that equation because generally they're not branded. They're concept driven. I mean, if Back to the Future was being shopped today, they might say, well, this is not a brand. You have to take a chance on it. Of course,
Yeah.
Back to the Future for me is one of the great movies of all time.
The thing is, like Top Gun, that was one of those movies that I knew like you just had to see in the theater, just like surround sound and like just the size of the screen and everything. I just don't feel like a comedy would like
Drives
something,
you for any of that.
yeah, like I don't think something like Happy Gilmore or Caddyshack would pull me to a theater the same way.
You're probably right. You're probably right. I think that times have changed. People just aren't. They're going to the movies with all the rigmarole of either getting the babysitter or the parking and the popcorn and all the other things. They want big screen entertainment. They want big effects. They want big stuff.
Well, and I think you said earlier too of like when you're sitting at home, you get comfortable, you lean back, and I'm like when I watch a comedy,
But you can also just get up and walk away.
Well, like when I'm watching a comedy, I'm going to be comfortable. Like I'm like just internally, I'm going to become comfortable, like to laugh and to enjoy that and just to relax. And when I go to a movie theater, I'm looking for that intensity and that excitement and that like having that experience with people. And for me, like I can sit there and laugh at something just as easily at home as I can.
I think the only comedies anymore that pull you to theaters are like comedies that aren't like purely just straight comedies. So like things like Deadpool. So like it has to be like a comedy with like action or something else that like because people want to see Deadpool. And like yes, is he known for being like comedic? Yeah, but like people want to go see Deadpool more than like, oh, I just want the comedy. Like if Deadpool didn't have any of the action, I think people would still go just because it's Deadpool.
Sure.
I think the one thing that like Adam's point being comfortable, the thing is like I went to a drive-in theater recently to see Doctor Strange, and like that is just a completely different experience that that was the first time, and it was just being able, it was comfortable. I was able to talk to my girlfriend while we were like, as things came up, I was able to laugh, I was able to go out to the bathroom.
Are you listening to the movie through your car speakers? Is that the way
Yes.
it works?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting stereo, so you don't listen to that little squeaky thing that used to hang on a hook.
No, I know
No.
some of them still have them there, but they're more of like parking indicators, like to space cars more than they are to like be used.
But no, we listened. So we parked on the edge of the screen, and like it was a double feature. So after the first movie, after we saw Doctor Strange, the second movie was Uncharted. We'd already seen Uncharted, but like we paid for the double feature. We're gonna see the double feature. And we were able to change the channel to the movie that was on the next screen, and we could kind of see it, and we watched like that for 20 minutes. And it was interesting. Like it depends on your car. Like if you have a car with Bose speakers, you're getting a fantastic experience.
Well, certainly these days with epic movies, sound is such a big deal.
Yeah. Still not going to use the word so. But
You just used the word "so."
oh
no, you broke them again.
So, damn it, yeah, Jeff, you got to take it.
I'm going to give Adam a break here. We now have changed. The moratorium is off. So away.
I'm still refusing. Well,
Just start a sentence, my guy.
well, you've also done an encyclopedia on the Twilight Zone. So how is doing that different, and how is it the same from doing the James Bond one?
Well,
See, now I got him doing well. I brought in well.
well, the Twilight Zone was a little bit different because I had to kind of start from scratch, whereas I'd done previous James Bond editions before the Bond Encyclopedia. I had to literally sit down with a legal pad and I watched, excuse me, there's a siren driving by. I had to watch all 156 episodes in a row.
Oh,
And, with the Bond Encyclopedia, I covered each movie, all 27 movies. With Twilight Zone, I had to get information on 156 episodes. So it was very challenging. I developed a relationship with Rod Serling's widow, Carol Serling, and she gave me the photographs. So once again, the photos came to the rescue. And she also opened up her legal files so that I could tell you how much people actually made back in the day. So that was kind of cool. There had been one key book, there have been several done, but the one key book that was published back in the 80s was called The Twilight Zone Companion by Mark Scott Secree, which was a very good book, but it didn't go heavily into the backgrounds of all the performers. And once again, I really wanted to learn about these wonderful actors who were in classic Twilight Zone episodes who are kind of not well known today. I mean, if I said Burgess Meredith, most people under 40 would say, who? Isn't that the guy who was the manager of Rocky? That kind of thing, Mickey. But these guys like Jack Klugman and Art Carney, there's so many interesting people in the Bond series over the years, and in the Twilight Zone series over the years. And I just love telling you a little bit more about each of them.
do you guys have questions about Twilight Zone?
I mean,
No.
I'm eventually. All right, fine. I'll ask the big one.
Yeah.
Helicopter crash. That's always I feel like one of the most important things that comes up in Twilight today is the helicopter crash in the movie. I think
I'm sorry.
Was that the movie or the show?
No, that was the movie. The show, the original Twilight Zone ran from 1959 to 1964. The movie came out, I believe, in 82.
Okay.
So it's many years later. And for the people listening or watching, it was a terrible tragedy during the production of the Twilight Zone movie. In the episode directed by John Landis, set in Vietnam, a helicopter crashed on top of the three actors playing their characters, two young children who should not have been on the set at 3:00 in the morning. And the actor Vic Morrow, one of my all-time favorite actors, because he starred in a series back in the 60s called Combat. They were all killed. So that was a horrible tragedy. Thank you for bringing that up, Nick.
You're welcome. I'm here to bring everyone down. That is my sole purpose, is to bring the entire mood down.
The television series, by the way, was the product of a guy named Rod Serling, and Rod Serling was a very unique writer. He had been a World War II veteran, a paratrooper in the Philippines, saw horrors, and got out of the war quite traumatized and had to channel himself into doing something. Otherwise, that PTSD would have been lurking constantly. So he began writing for radio and then live television and made his bones in New York. And then he just couldn't tell his morality plays because the sponsors were running the show and they didn't want to hear about racism or anti-Semitism or violence. They wanted to sell soap. So he came up with this brilliant idea of doing his morality plays in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror genre. So he could tell it, because for instance, one of the great episodes of the Twilight Zone is called Eye of the Beholder. And that's an episode where you see a lady with bandages on her head and these medical people lurking about, and she's having her bandages off today. supposedly in this society, if you don't conform, you have to have plastic surgery. And the bandages come off, and you see that she's the most gorgeous blonde you've ever seen, played by the lady who played Ellie Mae in the Beverly Hillbillies, Donna Douglas. And the medical personnel are saying, "Oh no, it didn't work. It didn't work." And then they turn around on the medical personnel, and they all have pig faces. That's called Eye of the Beholder. That was Serling's way of talking about racism in modern society. If he had told it as a regular story, they wouldn't have bought that. But since it was a science fiction, they were able to do that. And he did that quite a bit. He was the first television writer to write about the Holocaust, about Vietnam, about child molestation. These are really tough topics for late 1950s and early 60s television.
Yeah, that reminds me of like when we talked. Oh my goodness, when we were talking about The Last House on the Left.
Mark Scheffler.
Like, yeah, when I first like watched that movie, like nowadays I was like, oh, this isn't like a great horror movie. But then like when you think about like back then, like that was probably a trendsetter for like talking about like, you know, sexual abuse and stuff like that, which is like a very real like horror. Like, but I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
like
just
I didn't find that movie scary, but my fiance did, and that's kind of the point of it, is like that hits her where something that she can understand and relate to, where I have no relation to that because I'm not a female.
Yeah.
Like so then you've also worked on some documentaries and stuff. How is doing an encyclopedia different than making some video documentaries?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of the stuff gets tied in with my research. For instance, when I was writing combat films, one of the movies I wrote about was called Hell to Eternity. And Hell to Eternity was released in 1960. It starred Jeffrey Hunter, who was Captain Pike in the first incarnation of Star Trek. And he played a character named Guy Gabaldon. Now, Guy Gabaldon was an East LA kid who was semi-raised by Japanese Americans. And after Pearl Harbor was attacked, all the Japanese Americans on the West Coast were forced into internment camps. Guy, being a Caucasian, joins the Marines, goes to Saipan in the Mariana Islands, and single-handedly captures 1,100 Japanese, 800 in one day. He became known as the Pied Piper of Saipan. In reality, 6'1" Caucasian Jeffrey Hunter was not Guy Gabaldon. Guy Gabaldon was about 5'4" and Hispanic. So when I discovered that, I said, this is a great idea for a documentary. And I met Guy Gabaldon. He was alive, and he was the executive producer of my doc. It's called East LA Marine, the untold true story of Guy Gabaldon. So that was kind of an outgrowth of doing some original film research. And then my other documentary, I've done two on The Great Escape, the Steve McQueen, James Garner, Richard Attenborough World War II movie. And the latest one is called The Coolest Guy Movie Ever. And that's about, I hooked up with a French filmmaker who took a camera crew to all the locations where they made The Great Escape back in 63 or 62. So that's fun. But I'm also out there every day trying to sell films and TV shows. Like I said, I'm writing a lot of comedy, just trying to make my bones as a writer-producer. I've produced 5 films, including the 3 documentaries. I did Bleacher Bums for Showtime. I did Silent Night for Hallmark Channel with Linda Hamilton from the original Terminator.
Yeah, I think my girlfriend made me watch Silent Night.
Oh, okay.
I think I might have actually seen that one.
Yeah, that's a true story about a truce in the Ardennes on Christmas Eve 44, where German and American combat troops actually sat across from each other at a Christmas Eve table while a German woman told them to keep their guns outside, and they broke bread. They were friendly and left as friends in the morning. True story. Yeah.
How did you make the transition from being a historian into now writing and directing and producing for
Well,
television and
there
film?
was a big transition because as a historian, I wasn't making any serious money at all.
Mhm.
So I had to have some kind of job. And early on, I became a publicist. I was hired in 1978 by United Artists to go on the road to science fiction conventions to promote the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was with Leonard Nimoy and Donald Sutherland.
Mhm.
And I did that for about 10 months. And then I got hired in a PR agency and I started to understand how PR was done. And then I became what in industry parlance is known as a unit publicist. So I was actually assigned to a film crew as their PR liaison. It was a union job. I would work 3 months at a time. And interestingly, I would always be assigned to the lousy sequel to a good movie. So I worked on Porky's 2. I
Ooh.
worked on Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Ooh.
Oh no.
I worked on Eddie and the Cruisers 2. And then I also worked on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, which is the sequel to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It was not actually, it was a pretty fun movie.
I personally like Honey, I Blew Up the Kid more than Honey, I Shrunk the Kid.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm the only one that does, but I loved it. I think that was the first one I saw in the franchise. Was Blew
Well, here's
Up the
something
Kid.
funny. They have a meeting of all the department heads as we go over the script and all the production details. So I'm in a room with like 40 people around a giant square desk, a square table. And there's a scene in Honey, I Blew Up the Kid where Wayne Zielinski's got to find his shrink machine to shrink his son. So he goes into a warehouse, this giant warehouse with 12 billion crates. So I whispered to the guy next to me, I said, wouldn't it be funny if he found the lost Ark of the Covenant at the same facility? So it was whispered around the table, and the producer actually looked at me and says, that's not a bad idea. And it's actually, not only is it in the film, but Variety, when they reviewed the movie, they mentioned that.
Wow.
I'm always thinking, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that film. I like, my favorite part of the film is just seeing the people in the pocket, like in the little kid's pocket, like walk while it's walking around, tearing stuff down, and there's just people sitting there, like.
I think he takes. What does he take out? A malted milk ball the size of a bowling ball, and they're just chugging that down. It was fun. It was fun. We shot that in Las Vegas for 3 weeks, and then in LA. It was I just loved the whole filmmaking process. And then I went to Showtime in '92 and I became more of an executive there and got the idea of producing. And I made my producing debut in 2001 on a baseball comedy called Bleacher Bums, all about the Cubs fans. But unfortunately, because there's gambling in the play, Major League Baseball would not cooperate with us. So I had to change the name of the team to Chicago Bruins.
Would that be different now?
Well, you know, it's
because like gambling is like more accepted
everywhere
now. Yeah.
Yeah, everywhere. They had just had a bad experience when our film was in prep. They had done The Fan with Robert De Niro, which took advantage of the San Francisco Giants. It's like it was a creepy movie, and I think they had a bad experience with that, so we paid the penalty.
Yeah,
but we had a good cast. We had Peter Riegert from Animal House. We had Wayne Knight from Seinfeld. We had Brad Garrett from Everybody Loves Raymond. We had Charlie Durning from the Tootsie movie. We had a good cast. It was fun.
Out of all of the actors that you've been able to meet, who blew away your expectations the most?
Really good question. Really good question. I tend to like the character actor types, you know, the ones who are, you know, the kind of the background players at times. Next week I have a podcast. It's called Steve Rubin's Saturday Night at the Movies. Next week I'm interviewing an actress I've worked with 3 times, and she's wonderful. Her name is Jo Beth Williams, and she was the mother in the original Poltergeist. And we're talking about the 40th anniversary of Poltergeist. I thought Jo Beth was great. I've worked with John Voight. John Voight, also a terrific actor. I actually worked with Tom Cruise. He actually directed a 1-hour drama for Showtime in our Fallen Angels series. So I got time to spend with Tom Cruise. Very nice guy, very personable. I've worked with so many different people. Hard question to answer.
Yeah. I've heard, like, once you take away Scientology from Tom Cruise, he is like one of the most genuine and amazing human beings like on this planet. My favorite part,
you can attack his religion all you want, but he consistently brings entertaining movies
yeah,
to the screen, and often doesn't get the credit. I've seen Rain Man many times, and certainly Dustin Hoffman is great in Rain Man, but Tom Cruise is also terrific in Rain Man. And
what are your thoughts on him being like today's last like actual huge movie star? Like his presence alone will bring in the crowd.
We don't make movie stars anymore for the most part. I mean, those of us who've studied film over the years, the studios in their heyday would actually have like a method of creating movie stars. We kind of create them by accident. We take a wrestler named The Rock, and all of a sudden we give him some great film roles and he's a movie star. Same with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, the fact is that it's hard to create somebody who's bigger than life like they had in the old days.
Mhm.
I would say The Rock is a movie star today. I would say Tom Cruise is, Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, but there's a very small group, and we're not creating more all the time. That's a little frustration for me as a producer, because when you put a package of films together to try to get them financed, they're always asking, well, who's in the movie? Who's in the movie? Who's in the movie? Well, the number of actors who mean anything in the marketplace hasn't changed much in the last 20 years. It's not like there's 600 new actors to choose from who have name value. There's 40 guys that made sense in 86, and there are 40 guys that probably make sense today.
See, I think another huge factor with that is like with like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like you get these big like people who end up becoming these big names, but they're only in that cinematic universe until their contract runs out and like or they get killed off or whatever. And then it's like I feel like after that, people don't really go to the movies that they're in after that, or they just don't do movies because they're gonna make enough through like 3 lifetimes off of the movies they were in.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you wonder, for instance, Robert Downey Jr., I mean, obviously, when he's Iron Man, he's a movie star.
Yeah.
But if he's in another movie that isn't a Marvel movie, is anybody going to care? It's kind of a lot.
Dr. Doolittle makes me think of that all the time.
Horribly.
Yeah.
Chris Evans in Knives Out was amazing. So like it just depends.
That was a star.
Yeah, but like if
cast,
you
though.
yeah,
That
also
was, yeah.
like would just him being in that made you go to the theater to see it though?
No, I went
Yeah.
for Bond.
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig, thank you.
It's literally his.
I know.
Biggest
I know.
point.
I know. The names are escaping me right now. No, I saw that movie for Daniel Craig, not for Chris Evans.
I could see it working for like Tom Holland because like he was just in Uncharted, and I feel like a lot of people went to that because like, well, one, it's a video game series that a lot of people love.
not
I
an
didn't
IP.
go see Uncharted.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it yet.
The thing is that, what was I going to say? Basically, I think people go to the movies based on the concept of the movie more than ever. If you hear it's this, and this. For instance, a couple of years ago, they had that movie Yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw it.
Oh, love that movie. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the concept that only this one guy knows about the Beatles now. I thought that was brilliant. And that was kind of like a Twilight Zone episode in a way, because that's something that Rod Serling would have come up with. But yeah, I mean, that was concept driven. Most of the time when I hear about a movie, the idea sounds really terrific and I want to go see it. Or you hear a little bit of patter about the performances. There's a lot of buzz right now in Hollywood about this new Elvis movie coming out.
Mhm.
I hear it's going to be terrific. Tom Hanks plays Colonel Tom Parker, and the guy who plays Elvis is supposed to be amazing.
I think like I like what you said is right. Like I think it's more concept driven because there's a movie that I want to come out that Adam like showed us something about. Like I feel like it was years ago at this point, but it's the James McAvoy movie where like he doesn't know the
Oh,
script or
yeah.
whatever.
Have you
Like, he
heard
doesn't-
about this? It's I don't remember what the name of it is. But so basically James McAvoy gets like a very basic understanding of the scene. Like he doesn't know the plot of the movie. He doesn't know what's supposed to happen. He just kind of gets the bare minimum of what information he needs to do the scene. And the rest of the cast has scripts. And they go and they'll perform, and it's basically like James McAvoy improvising his way through the movie. And I think it's supposed to be like a dad chasing after his daughter or something.
Yeah, like trying to find his kid or
But like
something.
James McAvoy didn't know that his daughter had been kidnapped until like the character found out in the movie. And it's such like a weird concept of like you have this great actor who has no idea what the movie's even about while he's filming it. Like,
because like with that, like I think everyone loves James McAvoy after Split, but like then you get the idea of that, and like that makes me want to go see it in theaters. Like that idea, like I want to go see that movie.
I think we definitely saw it right. We saw the trailer right at the start of COVID, so that movie's probably come and gone on streaming, and we would have never known about it.
I'm looking him up right now to see.
Yeah, I'm looking through like the movies that he's been in recently.
Wonder if it's called The Bubble. Is that it?
Is it My Son?
No, it's not The Bubble.
It might be My Son.
It might
I'm
be,
looking
it's
at that right
definitely
now.
not The Bubble because
Yeah, it's My Son.
yeah.
It's Driving in the Heart of the Highlands. He
Murray
receives a call.
received-
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's called My Son. It's like a year old now, so
It's already
obviously
out. Yeah.
have to catch that on.
Released March 10th, 2022 in Germany.
But yeah, it was the director, it was a remake of his own film, which was a French film.
It's only on Peacock. Damn.
I
Adam,
have Peacock.
Adam, are you writing screenplays yourself? Are you involved?
I'm trying. I started I went to college for broadcasting and journalism because I didn't have the grades for film school. So I kind of made my own film school out of doing broadcasting journalism with a minor in theater. So I got the parts to do a film school, just not in a coherent film aspect. But one of my teachers worked in film, and so we did a private study every semester where he basically just taught me the extra stuff that I wouldn't get from the college of screenwriting and stuff like that, and a little bit of directing and producing and things. And I really fell in love with screenwriting. It just is time, and right now that's something I don't have a whole lot of between the podcast and I work 3 jobs. And but yeah, I started in college. I started doing like taking short stories and turning them into short films, and then getting prompts and writing scripts based off of that. And I have some fun little short films that I have written that I would love to make at some point, but I just can't. I wrote and directed a short film in college, and then the guy who was supposed to edit it gave me a first draft, and then I was like, okay, I told him my tweaks and stuff and sent it all back to him, and he said, yeah, I'll get right on this. And then the semester ended, and then he graduated, and then I graduated, and I've still never received that. And I don't have the footage of that either, because he has all the footage because we gave it to him and we were in college. So why would I keep an extra copy on my computer where space is needed for other crap from college?
Sounds like the basis for a good revenge movie.
Yeah. But then I get ideas, and I have a notebook that I write all my ideas in. And I kind of I do outlines a lot. I've been, just for fun, to when I have free time and nothing else to work on, I've been adapting the Harry Potter books into like a Netflix TV show, just to do something when I'm bored and want to write. If I don't have any ideas or drive to write my own original stuff. But I have a movie that I'm still in the outlining process, because I need to fix. I don't even know how to start it. I just have the idea of, it's called Cicada, and it's a horror movie that's kind of a mashup between like Friday the 13th and Zodiac, where every 14 years this killer comes out and does these huge, massive Friday the 13th style murders, and is only around for a week and then goes away, because he uses the sound of cicadas to hide the sound of his murders. And then the cops have to spend 14 years trying to find this guy, and then he comes out again and kills, and they're like, well, we still can't find him, but here he is back again.
Reminds me a little bit of It.
Yeah, very similar to
It,
It,
or
too.
it reminds me of like Jeepers Creepers
Yeah.
a lot.
Jeff and Nick, are you guys both involved in film in any way?
No,
They have law degrees.
no, we are.
we
are the
we
lame
wanted to
ones.
be cops.
Yeah,
and
and
here
then
they are
everything
doing the
happened.
podcast.
yeah, and then everything happened in the world, and I was like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And here
Nick-
I am.
Nick was. Were you an actual officer, or no? You just an internship thing?
It was just an internship. I'm still not ruling it out. Like,
But
just
Nick was interning with the state police when people started hitting cops with their cars on the side of highways for fun.
While I was on my internship for 5 months, 6 Illinois state troopers got killed making stops and being hit by cars.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a whole thing, and then,
Yeah.
like, they found it was like all premeditated.
Every month,
like
like
two-
you knew
like
every
two
month
happened-
that happened.
2 happened two happened within like 3 days. Or I think
Yeah.
3 happened within
Was
4
it,
days at some
was
point.
it different perpetrators, or was it the same
It was
person?
different. Sometimes it was a drunk driver driving the wrong way. Sometimes it was a guy on drugs. Sometimes it was a semi driver who had his tires pop or wasn't paying attention. None of it was like intentional. It was just, so in Illinois there's a
wild
a
thing.
law called Scott's Law, where if the trooper, if an officer or like an IDOT worker or someone associated with the state who's doing road work is pulled over on the side and their lights are flashing, even if their lights aren't flashing, you either have to you have to move over, and if you cannot move over, you have to slow down substantially. And people were violating that left and right, and like if you get caught not doing those things, it's like a $500 fine and like a mandatory court appearance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
How is it in the city these days? We hear
Awful.
in
Awful.
LA, we hear horror
So
stories
bad.
about the weekends in Chicago. It doesn't sound like it's getting any better.
So bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't
Well,
been
It's just
for a
not
long time.
televised anymore, because
Yeah.
it's gotten to
Well-
the point that it's so bad that people have stopped caring. Like,
It
it's
was-
another day for us.
it was while I was on internship in 2019 that the Cook County State's attorney announced that they weren't going to prosecute shoplifting. So
We've had an interesting thing too. They've made the shoplifting thing. I think it's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony anymore.
yeah,
Well,
I know.
And can't you can like legally rob, or like you can rob a place and
Up
they
to
won't do
$900.
anything. I thought,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like
Well, it's an
$999.
insult. It's an insult to the cops and the prosecutors, because they go about the idea of prosecuting these people, then they let them go.
I know there's the attempted recall on Gascon, right?
Yeah, I think he's gone. I think there's so
Well,
many.
they just got
people
rid
who-
of Chessie, whatever the hell his name is in San Francisco.
San Francisco, right?
Yeah, they just got rid of him.
I don't know what it's like there, but there's this kind of fringe of people. I don't want to get into politics, but the idea of defunding the police is so ridiculous. It's like from Oingo Boingo land.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see they literally did it in Minneapolis and Seattle, and it went straight to shit.
Yeah, it went bad real fast.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
on that happy note.
Yeah. On that happy note. Steve, would you like to plug anything? It's been a pleasure having you on. So
well, thank you. It's been fun with you guys. I'd love to come again when we have something new to talk about and we can use the word so.
Yeah. No, we're on well now. I'm going to use well forever.
Good Lord.
Well, I have my podcast, Steve Rubin's, that's Rubin, Saturday Night at the Movies. We're on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple. I do a classic movie review every Saturday on Facebook, also on Steve Rubin's Saturday Night at the Movies. I have a James Bond movie encyclopedia page on Facebook. I have a Twilight Zone encyclopedia page. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. And just out there every day trying to sell shows and working on some new projects. You will hear about them because I'll come back and tell you about them.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Be well. Stay safe out there.
Thanks, you too. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. And a special thank you to our special guest for coming on the show. If you liked the episode, come tell us your thoughts and join the conversation over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also share the episodes and give us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, it would be great if you helped us out by becoming a patron. On Patreon, you get unedited video versions of most of our episodes, and you get some extra bonus content, such as the Taskmaster live streams that are no longer available for free out there in the universe. You have to get them on our Patreon. Also, we have our Goes to the Movies podcast, where Jeff watches movies for the very first time because Jeff doesn't enjoy friendship and refuses to watch movies all the time. So yeah, that'd be great. Also, you can find us on themisfitfaction.com. We are a part of that network now, and we are enjoying every second of it. All right, that's it for this week. Join us again next time, wherever you hate to see it.